AdLib is the smartest way to activate programmatic, built for expert traders yet easy enough for any marketer. Launch across all top DSPs without contracts, overhead, or busy work. Schedule a free trial today and start maximizing ROAS with AdLib. Check out AdLib at getadlib.com. Thank you to Mediaocean for sponsoring Open Market. It started with some friendly banter on X, and now we're running a series of ads recapping the 13 announcements Mediaocean made in June. Last week was the partnership with SiriusXM for measurement. This week it's an integration with PMG for Ali Marketplace. Both Prisma and Innovid are part of the new PMG platform that gives marketers access to leading ad tech providers all in one app. I had no idea what that means, so I asked ChatGPT, and it said, Ali is PMG's proprietary AI-enabled media planning and buying platform. Ali Marketplace is the component that connects marketers with media and tech partners in one streamlined interface. Think of it like an operating system for orchestrating digital campaigns. So basically, that's what's going on. You got Mediaocean in there, Innovid, Prisma. You get all your media planning and measurement solutions, and PMG buyers can just get in there and get it all in one place. All right. It's just like Eric going to a buffet, so he doesn't have to make his way to multiple cupboards in his giant pantry. Tune in next week for another news highlight and visit mediaocean.com/pod to learn more. Welcome to Open Market, a podcast about building companies in the advertising industry. I'm Joe Zappa. I'm joined by Dan Robbins from PayPal and Eric Franchi, the Italian beef.
Will you please stop trying to make Italian beef a thing? Thank you.
Aaron told me this happened. And now Eric's moniker is the Italian beef. That's what everyone's calling him.
At the risk of Streisand affecting myself, Dan, it's great to meet you. Welcome to Open Market. We welcome all of our guests warmly. And sometimes it comes with a little bit of deprecation of...
Well, I'm very happy to be here. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
The brand of the podcast is so well known that when our sponsors do their ad read guidelines, they're like, make fun of Eric in the ads. So that's how we got here. Now Ari is trying to popularize Italian beef as a nickname for Eric, which I believe he was called in high school.
What are we talking about today, Joe?
Natural segue. I wanted to have Dan on because Dan is a client of mine at PayPal Ads, and he is one of the best managers and people organizers I've ever worked with. And so that's high praise coming from an agency guy, because obviously I just interact with lots of people and lots of teams. And Dan just really excels at bringing people from diverse perspectives together, like PayPal Ads. Dan, you can tell us more about it and what a complex sort of nascent organization it is, given you have it's kind of like a startup in this vast enterprise. It's like the ads unit in this financial company. You have different parts of the PayPal Ads organization, bunch of different audiences. Maybe you could start, Dan, by telling us about PayPal Ads and how complex it is and sort of how you think about the team building and team organization process there.
Well, I love a build. I think that complexity and challenge is one of the most fun parts of a business's arc. And you're right, PayPal Ads only launched at the end of last year. And so it's very new, but it is within one of the most storied financial institutions globally. And when you take a step back, as the ads market has transitioned, payments have really become the new cookie, particularly as shoppers become more empowered. They have more control over where they shop, how they shop, using agents, AI. Two, the way that ads are interactive, shoppable, engaged, also changing pretty quickly. And behind all of that is really the trust and the data and the identity to understand who people are and what they buy and what they might want next. And so the thesis behind PayPal Ads is you take a company that has over 430 million active accounts, 200 plus global markets, includes PayPal, Venmo, PayPal Honey, PayPal Open, which is our business suite, and have the opportunity to do a few things, which is one, bring ads to PayPal and Venmo and these surfaces, but two, bring the best of payments to ads everywhere. And to me, that seemed like this really exciting proposition because there's nobody who has that sort of combination of insight and assets to be able to figure out what the future of not just commerce, but also ads looks like in this agentic world. In terms of how you organize a team, again, it's a very exciting time in the industry more broadly.
Eric, did you see what he just did? I was just throwing a word salad at him about team building. And he was like, well, the first thing I'm going to fricking do is sell the shit out of this. PayPal ads. I'm going to tell you what it's about, why it's here. Your listeners are going to know about PayPal ads and what we're doing by the end of this call. This guy, we got to get him. Like, he's got to be talking to Wall Street.
He's one of those payments are the new cookies. Oh, by the way, 400 billion users, Venmo. What a bust.
Yeah. It's funny because I really was like, I'm not selling the book. Like, I really just truly, like, I think it's interesting and exciting, but you're making me blush now, Joe.
No, I mean, you did the intro in the perfect way, right? Like, you presented the thesis concisely. So we love that. Okay. So then talk about, like, I want to work backwards to your time at Roku, but maybe we could start, given we're already on PayPal, with like, PayPal ads is doing so many different things. Like, even I'm working with like multiple teams within PayPal ads, right? So maybe you could bring us into like, okay, you talked to Dr. Mark, I'm assuming. You agree to come on and do this with him. What do you do next? How do you think next about sort of the structure of the organization and how it's all going to work together?
So my role in PayPods covers a few things. The first is marketing and go-to-market. The second is data and identity. And the third is measurement and analytics. So it's kind of a mix of a bunch of different odd things, but my background kind of spans a bunch of those areas. To me, I always think about it that there's different sort of stages of a startup and different kind of parts of what you need in different places. But what's sort of unique about being a startup within a larger company is that you've got a very small, nimble team that's moving really quickly. And then you've, to your point, got a larger organization around it. And I often think about that as how do you get the trains moving at the same time? Because the pace and the focuses are different for different people. And maybe to mix metaphors, but like that choreography to me is the most important thing, like figuring out how you get each of those things kind of moving together.
Yeah, I mean, to put it simply, you have to move at the pace of a startup while leveraging the resources of like a mature enterprise and also like getting through the bureaucracy of that mature enterprise.
And that, different people have different priorities. They have different backgrounds in ads. They a different level of understanding. So all of that is always important, I think, when you're like going into the room.
That seems like a dream come true of, like being a startup within a larger organization that has all of those resources and great talent. What's hard about building a startup within a large organization?
I think anytime you have something new, and this is like more broadly, but you're sort of like introducing a different organism to like the broader culture. And again, because people have different backgrounds and different understanding, there's a lot of education that goes on, not just of like what we're trying to do, but also what are ads, what do these acronyms mean? Why it is important? Why do we have to reevaluate the way we've done things or consider new ways that different parts of the business plug in? That's a bit different than being in a startup where you've got 10 people, 20 people who all know exactly why they're there, and they all likely come from that world or industry. And so there's both that element of you're a small team kind of moving fast, but then also that element of you need to bring people along with you. That dynamic, I think, is different being a startup within a large company than just being a true startup. It comes with a lot of benefits, though, maybe to Joe's point, because you have sort of the backing, the institutional knowledge, the resourcing cross-function. Like there's a whole kind of world that sits around you that you just don't necessarily have in a startup.
We had breakfast with the PayPal team in Cannes, and I was sitting next to Dr. Mark, which I'm sure was horrible for him. He was like, how did I end up next to the marketing guy? Oh my God. But he was like, the thing is we have such an ambitious remit and a timeline with PayPal ads, which is, to build $1 billion ads business within a couple years. We don't have the time to teach like executives or the people who are going to be driving the business forward about the ads business, which is not to say you don't have to educate other stakeholders within PayPal about ads, but it's like when you're choosing people to run the ads business itself, my impression is his perspective is you need people who really have built ads businesses and get that. What's your thinking on that, Dan, in terms of like getting people who know ads really well versus you could hypothetically pull someone else from within PayPal who knows, PayPal and payments and finance, and then try to get them to build the ad unit?
Well, we've done a bit of both, which I think is exciting because there is that institutional knowledge that's helpful. And then there's also things related to ads that are unique. Two things that come to mind to me are one, and you guys have been in the industry for a while. Ads is kind of funny because on the one hand, it's not that complicated. On the other hand, it's quite complicated. And it does have like a lexicon that almost sometimes reminds me of finance in that they are like purposefully exclusionary and hard to understand. So the acronyms, the jargon, the way you talk about it. And then when you actually break it down, the concepts themselves maybe aren't as complicated as they might seem if you were just kind of reading the trades or trying to look through a product document. So part of it is sort of separating that from where do you actually sort of need domain expertise. To me, a lot of that is functional. So for instance, in a sales role, somebody who has the relationships, that's really important. And it's harder to bring that over from somewhere else. In a product role, perhaps there's parts of product that it is really important to, again, understand the way programmatic ads work. There are other areas like, events where maybe you can just find somebody who's really excellent at events and they can start to learn the rhythm of the industry and what's important. And you kind of have to look at it, I think, person by person and role by role.
As you're thinking about building a team, you're talking about, okay, there are different roles that obviously are going to require different things. Some of them might require really deep ad expertise, some not so much. I mean, in a lot of what you're saying, like, I just hear the need to think about what people coming from a lot of different vantage points care about and what expertise they're bringing to the table and how to make them all work together. And I found this in my business. Like, I'm a very, I like to be sort of a detached thinker, right? Like, I try to come from this, as best as I can, objective, logical standpoint. Of course, none of us is truly that, right? We're all driven by our own experiences and emotions, but that's kind of how I tick. And I had to learn, as I built the agency, how much of a people business all business is, right? And one thing I do to break that down is I think about personality tests. I love the Enneagram and the Myers-Briggs. How do you, Dan, you need to understand how so many different individuals are coming to the table. What heuristics do you use to try to understand where someone's coming from and what they want?
I can't believe you brought up the Enneagram because I love the Enneagram. I don't really use it at work at all, but I follow Enneagram content. I think for something that's totally pseudoscientific, it's actually quite insightful. So now I'm curious what your Enneagram number is.
Are you a 3?
I'm not. I'm a 9, but I have a very, very strong 3.
You're a 9. See, that is okay. So a 9 is the peacekeeper. A 9 is what my mom is. So I know this type very well. And Dan, that makes perfect sense. I literally introduced you and was Dan is the best person I've ever seen at marshaling different personalities and getting everyone to work together. And your Enneagram type is the peacekeeper, which is obviously that's a big part of what they're about. Eric and I are both 3s, which is achievers, which is a very common, obviously high achieving business person type personality because we're just 4s for third party validation. Sorry, Eric. I want to append that label to the illustrious Italian beef, but in my case, it's true. And so, I think anyone who's high achieving in the business context can get mistaken for a 3, but it's kind of the Enneagram is all about what fundamentally motivates you. And so for Eric and me as 3s, what fundamentally motivates us is that desire to achieve, get that third party validation, feel like we're worthy. Whereas a peacekeeper is trying to they're fundamentally motivated by that desire for peace and harmony, which could make a very good manager. What's your take on it, Dan?
Well, I also, again, have a very strong 3 wing. And I think to your point, Joe, a lot of people who work in the business world, a lot of people who live in New York, that is the air in the air generally. So I don't want to overstate the sort of 9 component of it. But I think what's interesting about the Enneagram, and maybe for those who aren't familiar, what's just interesting about it in general is it's a reminder that there are a lot of different leadership styles and that all of them can work in the right capacity. But to come back to your original question, what, whether it's personality tests or it's something else, what are you trying to get at? To me, the always kind of a thing, even if it sounds a little bit trite, is what are people motivated by? Number 1. Number 2, where do they feel comfortable? Kind of 3, where do they feel really uncomfortable? And 4, what are the things that they're being asked to do? What in their mind are the sort of benchmarks of kind of success within their world. I always try to think about that or keep it top of mind. And I certainly don't always get it right. To your point on like whether it's being like a type 3 achiever or a 9, there's always edges on both sides. So like, the edge for like a type 9 peacemaking type is conflict avoidance. Like you are oriented towards trying to make sure that everybody feels aligned and fulfilled and happy. And at the far end of that, like it can come at the expense of leaning into conflict, which is an important part of interpersonal relationships also. So I don't know that there's so much a secret sauce, but I do think so long as you're constantly trying to think about what the like edges and motivations are for people and recognize that it's impossible to like really know that, but it's the practice of trying to understand it that actually is the most important thing.
Eric, have we sold you? Are you going to get on board with this Enneagram stuff?
I mean, when I hear Dan talk about it, yeah, because I think the way
He's like, Dan didn't call me a whore for third-party validation, so I like the way Dan talked about it better.
yeah. I mean, he looks at it. I think again, not to put words in your mouth, Dan, but I think it's made you just generally more self-aware of how people are built differently, how they think differently, how they're wired differently, how they're motivated differently, and probably just makes you a better manager. Maybe more empathetic, maybe just like more aware that people just, are marching to their own beats.
To Joe's point, I do sometimes think about people in the context of Enneagram, not that I know what people's Enneagrams are, but I'm like, oh, this reminds me.
You're just aware that they're different.
Totally. I will say I have never asked anybody on a team to take a personality test because I do feel like it's one step away from asking people to like talk about astrology where they may buy in or they may tell you like, please stop. So this all exists really within my own head for what it's worth. But
yeah, people get very like uppity about personality tests where they're like, you can't boil me down to like a type or like whatever. But I'm just like, these are just frameworks for understanding what people want, what makes them tick, what they're motivated by, as you said, Dan. Like I had everyone on my small agency team like give me their Enneagram and their Myers-Briggs. And I actually did that after I heard a very successful entrepreneur who does like the Holdco model. So who like basically he owns like dozens of businesses. And so he has to hire dozens of CEOs to run those businesses. And he was on MFM and Sean Puri and Sam Parr were like, okay, so you need to hire like dozens of CEOs. You must have some sort of framework for like understanding what makes people tick. Cause it's just like very hard to keep all of that straight. And he was just like, yeah. It's Enneagram plus Myers-Briggs. And then I have like, it's not that it says everything, but it gives me like a working understanding of like what motivates this person. And then I can kind of like wade in with them and like get into the particulars. But it's very helpful for things like I can be very annoyed as like a very achievement goal oriented person, outcome oriented person by process people. Like when people get really deep into the like, oh, well, you're doing it this way, but you have to do it this way. And like my way versus your way and whatever. I'm just like, there is no way. I'm like, it can be whatever way. It's just like, we're trying to achieve an outcome. Right. So it's like, even for me, just like, no, it's helpful for me to step back and be like, okay, this is just how I'm wired. This other person, the process might be like their life raft. Right? Like they need to hold on to that to feel like they have an orientation and they know what they're doing. And if they don't have that, they'll feel totally at sea. So I think it's just really, really helpful for grokking how people tick and making them work together.
Hey, we want to get into some PayPal questions, but one of the things that was special about Dan and why we wanted to have him on was what you did prior to PayPal. So you were at Roku. You started as a like ad measurement manager. And at the end, you're a VP of marketing. You had over 100 people in your organization, 9-figure P&L. What were the big lessons of Roku? And like, what did you learn along the way to like build such a large organization?
So I started at Roku when the ads business was probably a dozen people above a Sleepy's in Herald Square. Was there for about
pre DataZoo, huh?
Pre DataZoo, pre IPO. In some ways similar to PayPal, it was an ads business that was just starting within a larger organization, which is why I feel like I've kind of started to see the way these arcs work a bit. But And then over the course of 7 years, Roku grew into a much larger global ads organization. Over that time, I started as being kind of the first ads measurement hire to build out measurement and research for the ads business, expanded into content and programming research when Roku launched the Roku channel, which is its free and premium streaming service. And then took on marketing, which included marketing, events, design, communications, sales enablement for the ads business. And then Roku acquired Funny or Die's brand and entertainment division, launched it as the Roku Brand Studio, and I led that, which included a kind of its own P&L and sales and creative and production functions. And so the role is kind of an island of misfit toys. Like there's a lot of different things, but it was really interesting because the team itself spanned everything from data scientists who were writing Python scripts in London to, production people working on branded content with Daniel Radcliffe in LA. It was very, very wide. And I really enjoyed that. I think to your question, Eric, on a few things that I learned, one was that every time you triple in size, everything seems to break. And by that, I mean both kind of revenue, but also people. Like when you start as one person, everything is in your head. When you go to 3 people, like you're now a pod, but you don't really need a ton of formal communication structure or process because you're all just sort of in everything together. Once you kind of triple in size to 9 or 10 people, now you're a team and not everybody is exactly aware of what everybody is doing. And so you need to start to build more of the like team leading, team structure organization. When you get to about 30 people, you're now a manager of managers, which is a huge shift because you're going from just coaching individuals to coaching people how to coach other people. And that's a totally different art. And then when you go from like 30 to 100, you're now at like more of an executive level. And a few things happen, which is one, you can't have a view of the work product across everything. You don't know everything that's going out the door. And as people start to try to like make sure that they're positioning what you see and what you're aware of. So, when you walk in the room, the conversation may change. What people share with you changes. And so you have to figure out how you're going to make sure you really understand how people feel about what's going on. I think the point of all of that is each of those kind of checkpoints or sort of transitions, I always felt like everything was breaking. Like there was team conflict, processes weren't working, people weren't getting information that they needed. It wasn't clear what people's jobs were. And each time I could sort of step back and be like, oh, we've just over the course of X period of time, tripled the number of people. And that's why this is happening. We need to go from this to a different culture and process. And that really, learned a lot of that kind of the hard way, but like that really kind of stuck out to me in the scaling journey.
That's great. That's like, we're going to call it Robbins law. Basically, every time we triple, everything breaks. Be ready for it.
Yeah, I love that framework. That's super cool. I haven't heard people articulate it that way. So of those levels, like 1, 3, 10, 30, 100, what level do you like the most?
This sounds like a non-answer. I really do like all of them for different reasons. They're all challenging for different reasons. I'd say the thing that I do like probably the most are the earlier phases. Like, I went from Roku managing this team to being an individual contributor again, like building out these functions from the ground up, putting together one sheets, putting together GTM documents,
Was there, I hate to interrupt, but was there a little ring rust when that happened? Like going from running 100+ person organization to being an IC, where you're just like, whoa, like I got to relearn this.
I don't know if it was so much relearning like how to do the work, but how to structure your day. You go from spending lots of times in one-on-ones and team meetings and check-ins, and suddenly, it's you and then it's you and a few people, and less like remembering how to do the work itself and more though, like the energy and the flow of the day changes. But I really like that. Like I like doing the work. I like getting into the detail. And so it's a fun part of the arc.
What about you, Eric? Like you were also a part of an organization you founded that grew to a pretty big scale. Like what part of it do you like the most?
For sure, the early stage, growing fast, figuring it out, needing to adapt, being in the work, being part of the flow versus the sort of end state where you're detached, you're managing an organization. That's why I didn't start another company right away. That's why I started a fund, which allows me to kind of like permanently be in that mode, for better or for worse, by the way. Nothing is like kind of easy and perfect, but yeah, for sure. There's nothing like that early stage, growing, learning, adapting every day.
Yeah, I'm definitely the same. I like to be on it, like to be doing it, figuring out as we go. So Dan, your final title at Roku was VP of Ad Marketing, and I think you've always come at marketing from an interdisciplinary perspective. Like you mentioned your role at PayPal now. There's a big go-to-market marketing component of it, but it's not the only thing you're doing. You're also touching product. How do you think that affects your approach to marketing, which is obviously near and dear to our hearts?
So I should say, my experience is within ads marketing, which is kind of a subset of B2B marketing, but it's very different than classic consumer marketing. And it's very different than classic sort of like software B2B marketing. So I sort of come at marketing writ large just within our own ads industry. And, all of that to say, most of this is just my own meandering experience. I don't know that there's sort of universal rules about marketing or what makes a good manager or that sort of thing. All of that said, I mean, I think a lot of ad marketing is really bad. I think it's like can be very, very similar. It can be very like pun driven. It can just feel also very much like an output and not an input. And to me, really good marketing should be a input to the organization. And by that, I mean bringing feedback and ideas and strategy into like, what business are we actually in? And less of an output, which is we're launching this thing. Now, please create the brand, the message, the press release, the thing. And so that to me is the kind of most important thing about like just the discipline in general. I think also there's a difference between sort of like the early days and the later days of ad marketing. In a smaller organization, it is very much focused on sales enablement, figuring out what business you're in. And it's very kind of like event and comms driven. And then as you get larger, it starts to look a little bit more like other B2B marketing, where you've got a demand engine, you've got a full MarTech stack, you're doing paid media. So it changes a bit over time. To me, though, the like really important thing is truly understanding the business and again being an input and not just an output.
Input versus output is a very interesting way to put it. I think it really comes down to does the CEO or whoever's leading the business unit, how do they think about marketing and the people they brought on to do marketing with them? I think, to be candid with you, a lot of CEOs or, in PayPal's case, it would be a GM, like they don't respect marketing, right? They think it's like the thing you kind of tack on at the end. And so it's a self-reinforcing cycle because they don't necessarily hire marketers who are capable of having a seat at that executive table and saying, like, how are we thinking about the product we're developing and its place in the market, and then how we're going to talk about it to the market. And so it's like, it kind of starts with that expectation. Like, you need the people in the other parts of the organization, especially the person leading the organization, to think like, marketing is a fundamental component of this machine. I'm going to hire marketers who are good enough that I actually care about their input, right? Like, I actually care about what they have to say about like, here's how the market is, and here's like how we're going to enter it and tell a story within it. And if you do that and you get the people to match who actually can like have a conversation with the CEO and the executive team, and figure out those strategic components, then marketing can be an input. But if you have like sort of a senior people and then you have like a kids table where you have like tactical marketers, then you're never going to have that input dynamic.
I totally agree. And my sort of journey to ads marketing was kind of meandering. Like I again started before I was at Roku, I was at Nielsen. I started in sort of the measurement and data world. And what I realized was that the part I liked about it the most and the part I was best at was actually the storytelling. And from that, it made me sort of realize like, oh, maybe I should actually be doing more of the marketing and less of just the, writing SQL queries. But because of that, I've always felt like I really like to get into the depth of the product and like really understand how it works and what we're doing.
This is actually a good point to ask the question I've been wanting to ask since the beginning. So when you were describing PayPal, you described it both as, like a commerce media play, right? Like you have the ability to put ads across your properties. You have the ability to put ads at certain moments, given that you're in the transaction, right? That are unique to PayPal, right? Near or post purchase, right? So you're on the one hand a commerce media play, but on the other hand, you're like a financial data play, right? Payments are the new cookies. So how much of what you're doing now or thinking about now is educating the market about the latter, right? Because in my mind, like this is a very unique data set that isn't being utilized by too many companies. And there's like a learning curve for buyers of, just like anything that's like, net new. How much of it is educational, and is that a challenge right now for both your team and the market?
It's the number one thing, because anytime you're launching something new, people, you live and breathe it, and other people have no idea what it is. And so, I always think about like, we have to repeat ourselves 5 more times than we think we should, because again, this is our day to day and it's not everybody else's. And they don't necessarily have a reason to care about it until you sort of can articulate that and explain it. I mean, I think your question, Eric's a really good one, which is data is very much at the core of where this goes. We talk a lot about our transaction graph. And if you think about in social media, there was a social graph that connected friends. And in the later iterations, there was an intent graph that kind of had a view of what you were interested in and watching next. And that a transaction graph is not just like, data about what you buy, but it's also the connection of how that all pulls together in the businesses and the people that you're connected with. And so by that, we mean not just with PayPal that you can buy something online or in store, but with Venmo, you're sending money to friends. So, the number one emoji used in a Venmo message is the pizza emoji. So there's a social component to that. There's PayPal Honey, which provides the best prices for things that you're looking at online to shop. And then again, the whole kind of PayPal Open component of managing your business. The graph idea of that is it's actually the linkage between all of those things that are really interesting, because you get a view not just of what's happening in your business, but a cross merchant view of what's happening in your category and your complements, and not just like a view of what people are buying, but when they go to a hotel, what are they paying back for? What emojis are they using? Who are they connected with? And so that's, to me, the kind of like secret sauce and exciting thing about where this goes over time.
That's interesting. You talked a lot about Venmo. So is Venmo kind of the sleeper? I know you're not speaking for the company in your mind of how this stuff like really comes together.
Marketers have a lot of excitement about Venmo, I think, for a few reasons, which is, again, one, it's social. 2, it's like the go-to and money movement for Gen Z and millennials. About half of that is younger. And it's very much at the center of culture. Like you can look at how the words people use and the emojis they choose by category change over time. And I think there's a lot, we're only at the beginning of that. And so there's a lot to do both in running ads on Venmo, but also, learning about that pocket of the market. Because again, it's different than just getting a data set that shows you kind of what you're buying or what's happening to your competitors.
Is your Venmo public or private, Dan?
My Venmo is private.
Joe, is your Venmo public or private?
I'm pretty sure it's private.
I'm private too. I should flip it open. Why not?
Yeah, let the people see. I always think it's really funny when you're like, it's like your high school girlfriend just Venmoed someone for pizza. I'm like, okay, that's interesting intelligence. I don't know what I'm going to do with that, but I'm glad I know.
I had a friend who once opened my Venmo and went through and just liked all of the messages on the feed. And it really is like, a blast from the past of all sorts of people. So you just got to be careful.
That's random.
Yeah.
Dan, I think also, like you mentioned, that ad marketing is often undifferentiated. And I think like with PayPal, the reach that we have across, tens of millions of merchants and hundreds of millions of consumers, it's at the center of everything we talk about, right? Because it is like, if you had to distill PayPal's right to win or right to enter the commerce media space down to one thing, it would be that data, right? It would be the transaction graph, the level of understanding of so many different consumers, and the ability to see across so many different businesses and their transactions with those consumers. And so I think, Yeah, when you can put that key differentiator at the center of all of the marketing, then you always can answer the number one question, which is like, how are you different? Why do you have a right to be playing in this space? Which is something, just quite frankly, a lot of ad tech startups who are not originating within a giant enterprise with a global view of consumers cannot say.
Yeah, and I think about it even more broadly. I always think like good ad businesses have kind of three ingredients. Like one, they've got to have an audience that is interesting. Two, they've got to have that audience at scale. And three, they have to have an ad product that works. And, if you've got two of the three, you can build a good business. If you've got all three, you can build a really great business. And that's always I guess to your point, Joe, like when I look at all sorts of different companies, how I often think about it.
I think that's a good note to end on.
Absolutely. Dan, this has been awesome. Thank you, man.
Thank you for having me. Really enjoyed it.
We learned about Dan's Enneagram. Now we know his core desires and fears. And I will be using that to build a deeper relationship with him, and we will all ride off into the sunset.
Dan, before we go, where can people find out more about PayPal ads and about you?
PayPal ads, you can find out. We're actually working on launching our website in the next month or so. So you'll be able to find it at paypal.com, and you can follow PayPal on LinkedIn. And to learn more about me, I mean, this podcast is about as far as it goes. So
that was your cue to promote your LinkedIn or your X. We'll do it. Don't worry.
Well, I'm not really on X. Yes, LinkedIn.
Join us on X. It's a peacekeeper's heaven.
All right. We'll see you next week, everybody.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.